Thank you. Is there any questions before you leave, Kathy, I don't know if there's any questions or not, if anybody has any questions? No? Okay, I just didn't want to make you run back and forth if
Well,
somebody
that's
had a
fine.
question.
That's fine, thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the board?
I don't really see where it would be, I don't see a downside to it. I mean, I don't see where we could, there'd be no harm in doing it, that's for sure. And I think I think it probably is a good thing myself, but it's my opinion.
I guess my only thought on it, I have a little bit of a tough time signing something without Karen going through it. Just because she keeps me out of a lot of trouble. And I wouldn't mind having her and maybe Verlin take a look at it and bring it back just to make sure. So, I mean, I'm not against it. I really struggle with signing stuff without having legal go through it.
Well, I guess, I don't know, have you looked through it, Karen? Have you seen that?
Yep.
And is it, I mean, if
So-
we were to do this, we're not gonna, I mean, I don't really see where we could get in trouble by doing it, right? Or,
Well, the way, I have no problem with, upholding the Second Amendment, and the right to bear arms under the state constitution, but some of the things in the proclamation that they're submitting, that you sign, probably would not fly. For example, like the first paragraph in there talks about that no federal law, no federal law regarding gun rights will be valid in this county, and we really don't have the ability to do that, really. Federal law, even under the U.S. Constitution, federal law is supreme in the land. That overrides any contradictory or any law in local government or state government that conflicts with it. So I probably would not recommend signing this proclamation as it stands, actually, really, because of that.
Hang on. If you have something to say, I need you to come up and we'll talk up there. It's too hard because we can't hear then.
but with having said that, if it is unconstitutional, then it is null and void, right? I mean, correct?
That would be true, but under the U.S. Constitution, it's the federal courts that really have the right to say what's constitutional, what's not constitutional. So, I have no problem with signing with something like this, as long as it says that it's sort of subject to interpretation by the federal courts of what's constitutional or not. Otherwise, you're going to have people, out there deciding for themselves what's constitutional or not, rather than something that's more consistent and something that's actually decided by a court, so.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment if I may. I too obviously am not against the Second Amendment, but maybe in this situation, I don't know why, for one, I'm sorry we didn't get this real soon enough to get really involved in it. I think maybe the best thing might be, in my opinion, is maybe have a committee of Karen and the sheriff and Barry, and then some representatives of their group to sit down and go through this and then come back with a recommendation. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, I actually like that idea. Is that something that would be acceptable to the board? And if so, is there somebody from the group presenting it that would be willing to sit on that?
Just so you know, if you're going to be forming a committee, that committee is going to be subject to open records law, so.
I don't think anybody has a problem with that.
All right, just wanted to make sure you were aware of that, so. Yeah, but that doesn't make any difference. Once this board establishes.
And that's
a
fine.
committee,
I don't
yeah.
see any problem with it
Yep.
being open records.
Yep,
So would that be all right with Gerald? Would you be interested in that, or who would be?
that's who?
Gerald Gorick.
Well, if that works, Commissioner Montgomery, would you make that a motion?
I will certainly make that a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we, I guess for Karen's sake, set up a committee of Karen Prout, Mr. Ramberg, Commissioner Ramberg, Sheriff Gwandy, and a representative from the group, and I'll ask and request that as part of the motion, that Mr. Ramberg coordinate that meeting with everybody else.
That works. I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Beth, roll call.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Now we go into planning and zoning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sam Miller with County Planning. First on the agenda this morning, we have LU-0057-22. Brent Lonis, on behalf of Hess North Dakota Pipelines LLC, is requesting a zone change to heavy industrial and a comprehensive plan amendment for approximately 176-acre parcel. This property is currently within the agricultural zoning district. A project overview. So the applicant is working through the minor subdivision process. They've actually printed on Mylar and they're pretty close to recordation phase, just awaiting a decision from you all today. They're creating 2 lots from the existing 3 parcels. Both new lots will be over 40 acres in size. As you all know, or I guess I'll just give a little description too of the project, but the purpose of this request is to construct and install 2 compressor stations to compress low-pressure well production gas from an existing pipeline network to the Tioga gas plant. As you know, you all have all made a determination that compressor stations are not a regulated use in the county. We leave that up to the North Dakota Industrial Commission. However, the reasoning that Hess wants to get this parcel rezoned and then thus triggering the comprehensive plan amendment is multi-part, but Hess has other compressor stations in other locations within the county that are within the heavy industrial zoning district, and they want to maintain consistency with some of those stations. The compressor stations they're installing are heavy industrial facilities with a design life of 25 plus years. So they are a permanent piece of infrastructure. And then while Hess believes that applicable exceptions to the section allow Hess's ownership and use of property as proposed, Hess is seeking this rezoning in part to prevent any future questions concerning zoning and land ownership. So that's kind of a little bit on why they're requesting this heavy industrial zoning district. As you can see from the map, they aren't too far away from other commercial and industrial uses. Access to the site will be taken from 104th Avenue. Proposed traffic volumes are included in your packet. The applicant has spoken with the chairmans of both Dry Fork and Pleasant Valley Township regarding road usage for the proposed project. Both chairmans agreed to a pre- and post-inspection, and Hess will pay for repair of damages caused by project activity. This project would require Williams County Water Resource Board approval. They received conditional approval in June. The timeline, all construction is planned to be completed by November 2023. The Planning and Zoning Commission met on July 21st and heard this item. It was recommended unanimous approval with 5 conditions that are listed in your packet. Number 5, I just wanted to call out, so if construction related to this approved zone change does not start within 18 months of approval and no extension has been granted, the zoning will revert back to agricultural, and the applicant is aware of that. We have the applicant on the phone and in person, so if you have specific questions for them, please feel free to reach out to them. That concludes my presentation, unless you all have any questions. Oh, there was approval from Dry Fork Township, and that's included in your packet.
Okay, is there any questions for Sam? I guess I was just looking around, I'm sorry, because you said on the phone and in person. I thought somebody was sitting in the audience with a telephone. No, it was a joke, I'm sorry. It was a Kemp joke and it wasn't very funny, sorry, it didn't go over. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Well, I do, I talked with the chairman of both boards also, and with Dennis with County Highway. And I don't really see the point of having them come down 5 miles of gravel when they can use County 21 and just come into the project heading east instead of coming down the gravel and heading west. It's, I mean, that's the reasoning behind having that paved route around Beaver Lodge, is to relieve the pressure off the local township gravel.
Is there somebody from Hess that would like to answer that, whether on the phone or in person? You're stuck. You're the one here. Come on up.
I am. Good morning. I'm Rochelle Williamson with Hess. I just want to double check. Brent or Stephen, are you on the phone?
Hey, Rochelle, this is Steven. I'm on the phone here, if you call it.
Okay. Stephen, do you want to take that? I've got, what we were told. Do you want to address it?
Yes. Hi there. Stephen Marchese. I'm the project manager for the project. So I'll just give a little bit of background. The use of 105th for the undivisible overweight loads that we're talking about has been denied for past compressor stations, as well as we did contact the Road and Bridge Department earlier this year in regards to this project, and did have it reconfirmed that the weights that we're referring to for the compressors coming down to 105th is not an option, and it's just due to the design of the road and the weights that will be transported. So the from Road and Bridge Department was for us to use 104th. In addition to that, the street 59th is not currently in a condition that we can transport these overweight loads on either. And we did look into potentially improving that road if we were able to use 105th. And there are a lot of utility conflicts, both underground and overhead, that would make it quite difficult for us to bring that road up to county standard.
Well, I guess I'm kind of curious as to why you can permit a load down a township gravel, but you can't run it down a county pavement. I mean, it's still gonna be a permitted load. I mean, if you need another set of Jeeps, or if you have to make the radius wider by the cemetery, that would be, we would be okay with that too, because as far as overhead, there's only one overhead power line running by there. I don't know what's underground there, I guess. I mean, you guys would know what's underground. It'd be your guys' stuff, so.
Did you mention a bridge there? Is there not one on 104th? Or, I mean, was that the issue? The bridge? Not on.
Well, I don't know, I grew up there and I don't remember ever crossing one, but.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a bridge on 104th.
Okay.
I don't really, I guess, well, I was talking with Dennis on County Highway, and he was kind of of the same mind I was. I didn't really see why we would use, because right now, you guys have an agreement with Pleasant Valley not to use 104th already. I don't know why this would be different, but.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Ramberg, I'll just say, I spoke with Rhonda back in March, and that is what she had told me. Don't even consider trying to get approval to come down 105th.
you know, if that's what they told you, that, but I just don't see why, because, it's been built up. I mean, of course, I don't know what kind of weights are, I suppose these compressors are probably a couple $100,000 alone themselves, I imagine.
I assume this Highway 21 is built the same specs as other highways that are illegal at 105.5. Right, so
Stephen, can you elaborate a little bit about the infrastructure that's underground on the east-west that was impeding us from being able to develop that also?
Yeah, it's a combination of both Hess infrastructure as well as other third-party infrastructure that would be in the way. The overhead utilities, we can work around, and we work really closely with MWC, but it's primarily the underground infrastructure that would make it quite difficult. Again, I can't speak for the exact technical reasons why the county is, the Road and Bridge Department specifically, has not allowed us to travel down 105th in the past. But like I mentioned earlier, we've had two projects, one in 2019 where we've moved 8 of these compressors, and another project in 2021 where we've tried to move another 8 of these compressors down 105th, and that has been denied, and we've had to reroute around it.
Are we able to do an approval based on a double check with Dennis for routing?
Well, I would imagine, I mean, if you're gonna get your permits through Load Pass, they're gonna dictate the route anyway. I believe Load Pass does, but, I don't really, I find it hard to believe that we would shove off heavy loads onto the township roads. I mean, when we have our own infrastructure, I mean, we get cranky with the state when they do that to us. Why were we doing that to the townships?
Well, and I think you hit it right on the head, though. The Load Pass is gonna route it. Usually when you put it in and pull it up, they're gonna send you the route. And I can't imagine that Load Pass would send you down 104th when 105th is right there. Although, I've been wrong before.
That's what we were told when I spoke with them in March.
Well, what are the wishes?
If it was a county highway's decision not to allow 100 on 105th, I mean, I would assume we could say, yes, we can.
And I agree we can. I would just be a little bit leery with that without checking with Dennis, that maybe there's something we don't know, because I haven't talked to Dennis about it.
I did, and he was like-minded. I mean, he didn't really see why we would use 104th when, I mean, that thing gets tore up bad enough the way it is, but. Yeah, I guess I would, yeah. I'd make a motion, we would approve the project with the 5 recommendations and would add to use 105th, if that's good.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask just one quick clarification question on that? Okay, so you're saying, we should be using 105th. What happens if we just are not able to improve the road east and west to be able to get over to our access point to the project? Just so that
Well, the 59th, if you're coming off County 21, you turn right by the cemetery there. And if as you're traveling to the east, that's the better part of that road. that road's a mile long, and it was basically, it's nothing but a glorified, it's just a glorified prairie trail. And if you come in from the west, or from the east heading west, there's several lines you'll wind up crossing, and then down in the bottom of that draw, there's a couple big old cottonwood trees right off the edge of the road. I mean, I would personally, I think coming in from the west is be simpler for you, but it's going to take that 59th Street's going to take some work to handle that stuff. And if it, most of the traffic's just going to be the cement trucks, gravel trucks, that kind of stuff, and that, the 8 big compressors, I don't see where it's going to be a problem, but.
Stephen, do you have any other clarifications of anything that you could offer? I know we should have done this prior to the vote, but any other questions you have?
Yeah, I guess my only question was, would it be acceptable for us to come down 105th until we get to 60th Street, and then head east on 60th Street, and then come down 104th for that next mile? So we'd only be on 104th for basically a mile.
Right, but it's still, and
Well, is there something on 59th that you can't drive over? Is that what the problem is? Is there something underground there that we're trying to avoid? Because it sounds to me like it's 59th's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure in that area, and in addition to that, we've had the water board approve our, existing civil plans, which have our access road coming off 104th, so we start changing that, then all of a sudden we start changing a lot of our watersheds and things like that. So I just would like some clarification if we do keep our access road off of 104th, but the lion's share of our travel north-south would be onto 105th. Would it be an issue if we just use 104th for basically a mile?
And the heavy loads would be during the winter months, right, to decrease any impact?
That's correct. Yeah. And like we mentioned earlier, we do, have pre and post move inspections and be responsible for any damage that occurs.
I guess that would probably be the lesser of two evils, that's for sure. But, that whole stretch there, that mile, I'm guessing there's probably, there's more than a dozen. There's probably, 15, 18 lines that run north and south through that mile stretch. So regardless, you're going to be crossing lines no matter which way you come in. The big main line is on the side that you actually want to avoid, I guess. Is that the reasoning? Is that I think you have a 48-inch line that runs through there?
No concerns with driving, over the existing lines. We have adequate cover and protection. It's more just if we have to construct a new road coming off 59th that it becomes an issue. So our building our lease access road becomes an issue.
Well, I would imagine you're going to wind up having to build something regardless anyway, because like I said, it is literally just a trail.
Yeah, no, understood. We do have the civil design already done for the road. However, the road comes from access from 104th due to the complications from 59.
So is that when you're talking about rebuilding the road on 59th, I'm assuming you're just planning on fixing up that road up to where you turn off to get into the future compressor station, or are you do the whole mile?
Well, currently the access road heads basically straight to the east from where the compressor stations will be located and ties into 104th.
I believe our civil drawing was in the packet also, so you can, it gives you kind of a visual of where the road is coming down. You know, we passed the intersection there, go a little bit to the south where your cursor is, yep, and then come in roughly in there over to the new, a little bit further north than that. And then, right, Stephen?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I couldn't, the civil drawing couldn't be printed for whatever reason.
Oh.
So they don't have it now.
Okay.
I apologize, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get that puppet to print.
So off of 59th, so you're not coming off 59th? Because I thought the same thing. I thought the pictures.
The pictures in our packets were off of the lease roads off of 59th Street, showing north and south and east and west, so,
Yeah, we're coming off of 104th. Yep, and then it takes a little bit, head west, and then it takes a little bit of a dip south, and then comes in, yeah, over to the compressor station, which is in the farmed area up in there.
all right, well, that clears up some confusion, because the pictures in my packet showed all the lease roads coming off of 59th there, so. Now it makes more sense.
Do we need to remove the condition?
But is
I
part of the
apologize
issue
if
though
there was
that,
confusion, if that probably makes more sense, yeah, we're coming down 104th, and then, so we can bypass.
is part of the issue though that they built their civil drawing based on information they got from Rhonda instead of information did you not request to speak to Dennis so that you could get his official opinion on it?
No, sir, I did not. I just went to Rhonda and took that as what would and would not be allowed by the county.
Which I guess if the townships are okay with it,
Well,
it's unfortunate, but I think that using our roads if they're, would be better for them than tearing theirs up.
Well, correct, and like I said, I talked with both the townships, and they actually, what they both told me was they would just as soon they use the pavement, but if you can't, you can't. But I'm pretty sure we can. And now that I know where this is gonna be, instead of the pictures, 105th and 60th would be just fine, you know.
That way you're only using a mile of 104. So I'm going to assume we're going to need a amendment to the last motion.
I would amend my motion for the, if I could.
No, wait a minute, hang on, Barry. All right, let's do that. So you don't have to say amend, you can just make a new motion.
I would make a motion to approve the project with the recommendations, and if we could use 105th and 60th, and then access 104th from there.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
That was easy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. For whatever reason, it wouldn't print after that page. I'll call you.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, because they had said that they were gonna use those township roads, we just instructed the applicant to contact the township. So, both townships, but anyways, moving on. So, next on the agenda, we have the Williams County zoning ordinance and subdivisions regulation update. So on March 3rd of 2020, the board had entered into a contract with Land Solutions to assist our division with the zoning map and zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations. As you all can recall, the zoning map update was approved and adopted on November 2nd, 2021. So we have been working with Land Solutions to do mainly to fix grammatical and formatting issues with our current ordinance and subdivision regulations. But with that, there's about 7 large-scale changes that we have put in front of you all to have adopted. These changes, we've either noticed that they've kind of become irrelevant or they just need to be updated and haven't been updated in many years. So I'll just run through those. There's 7 major changes in those big binders in front of you. The top tabs are the sections that were being or are proposed to be significantly adjusted. So the first one is public utilities. Currently, how we have public utilities listed in the ordinance is very broad and generic. As you all know, public utilities can vary on a large scale from really minor public utilities to pretty major like substation, water reservoir, big lagoon type utilities. So we've broken those into 2 categories. We have minor public utilities and major public utilities. And listed in the definition section of the ordinance, we break down those 2 different kinds of utilities. So we have water supply, sewage disposal, excluding sewage lagoons and municipal sewer facilities, electric power, telephone, cable, etc. This is all minor utilities. Major public utilities would be wireless communication facilities, major energy facilities, wind energy facilities, and those are going to be allowable only in pretty much either conditional uses or permitted in heavy industrial zoning district. Those will not be allowed in any residential zoning districts. So I don't know how you kind of want me to run through it. If you have questions, you can just jump in and interrupt me. Okay. So next we have home occupations. So currently what our ordinance states is that any type of home occupation you'll need a conditional use permit for. These are seen in agricultural zoning districts and all of the residential zoning districts. We kind of go through phases. You all probably have noticed with home occupations, sometimes we'll get 5 on an agenda. And they are all very similar in nature, and we hardly ever get calls for disturbance or nuisance for these. So what we're proposing is that home occupations are a permitted use in agricultural, urban residential, rural residential, and existing small lot residential. So we put a section in the ordinance that lists criteria to qualify for a home occupation. So if someone calls and says, hey, I want to do piano lessons in my home, would this qualify as a home occupation? So we'd run through the list of the criteria to make sure they do qualify and then say, hey, you're in an urban residential zoning district, go for it. These are the rules that you have to abide by, appointment only, you're on a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. schedule. You can't really disrupt the neighborhood. If your neighbors complain, we'll have to consider looking at this again, possibly either in our department or bringing it to you all for determination on if this even qualifies as a home occupation. So we still have a little bit of ability to regulate those, but we wanted to pull back regulation on home occupations. So that's that new one. We didn't list examples of home occupations just because that can get a little bit binding. It's kind of one of those things where a home occupation, if you see one, it's a little bit hard to define. So we do have a looser definition, and that's why we entered the section into the ordinance on criteria for things that qualify as home occupations. So that's that. So it will no longer require a conditional use permit. It'll just be a permitted use in those zoning districts. Next, we have mobile food units. So these are mobile food trucks, known as. So in the current zoning district, these are listed as a temporary use permit, but because we were seeing mobile food trucks used as a more permanent structure, we were allowing them through a conditional use permit process. This wasn't defined in the ordinance, so we wanted to make a section that really defined mobile food units. So what the new ordinance states is that they're allowable through a conditional use permit process in ag, rural commercial, urban commercial, and public and light industrial zoning districts. So once they're approved through the CUP process, these will be required to follow that chapter in the zoning ordinance. This section has been added to list mobile food units as a use, as well as add the section into the ordinance pointing the public to the purpose, location, and intended use and effect of mobile food units. So I just also want to kind of clarify mobile food trucks, units, to how we see them as a use. So if mobile food trucks are truly mobile in nature, they're going from place to place to place, and they're not tied to a specific property, they can operate as long as they have their state permits. We, as the planning and zoning department, can't regulate them because they're not tied to a specific property. They're truly mobile in nature, so they won't qualify for this conditional use permit or a temporary use permit. Mobile food trucks that are going to be on property for 2 days to 14 days would apply for a temporary use permit. So they'd come to our office, it's $35 a day for a temporary use permit. And so we can look at their site plan, we can look at their emergency services, we can look at their parking plan, et cetera, because they're going to be there from 2 days to 14 days.
So you're gonna have to look at all the mobile food units that come to the fair then? Is that
So the fair, like,
well, I mean, there's mobile food units that come to the Upper Missouri Valley Fair and they park
so
there.
that's in the city, right?
So that wouldn't have anything to do with us.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and so this question came up at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It was a good question. So like up at Blacktail, you have mobile food trucks that park up there for the weekend. So those are temporary, but they're there for 2 days and then they're off. And then they can come back the next weekend. Those are fine as long as they have their state permits. Anything beyond those 2 days, so 2 days to 14 days, temporary use permit. Beyond 14 days, so you'll see some mobile food trucks that have like skirting and are more permanent in nature, those would require a conditional use permit because at that point, they're becoming a part of the physical property. And then we need to notify neighbors, we need to look at fire safety. That kind of pulls in more of the full-scale review. And those are going to be subject to, like I mentioned, those zoning districts. So for the permanent mobile food trucks, those are going to only be allowed in commercial, public, and light industrial. So no residential zoning districts, because at that point they're permanent use, and that's conflicting with residential use. Does anybody have any questions on that? Good? Keep rolling. So temporary use permits. So where's my sheet? Temporary use permits, so these in our current ordinance there was a fee of $500, and there was some confusion on how they were really treated. It's very gray, very confusing in our current ordinance. So we decided to make it a little bit more clear. For temporary use permits, they cannot exceed that 2 weeks. So you have 14 days. So between 2 days and 14 days, if you're going to be operating some kind of use, you would have to apply for that temporary use permit. And then also we added in there, so only 4 events per calendar year for these temporary use permits. So fireworks is kind of a bad example because they're regulated through the state, but let's pretend that they didn't have a time limit. So if you were going to sell fireworks, you'd get to sell fireworks 4 times a year for no more than 14 days each time, and that can't be consecutive, that cannot be consecutively. So you can't be back to back, 2 week, 2 week, 2 week, 2 week. It's four events per year. The types of activities that would qualify for a TUP are listed in that ordinance, and they're not limited to a certain zoning district. So you can go wherever, but you still have to apply for that temporary use permit. And then there's a list of 7 criteria. This is also approved by the Director of Development Services, so this wouldn't have to go before the commission. That was also a gray area. Some TUPs were coming before you all, so that would make the applicant go through a 2-month process just to basically sit on someone's property for 7 days. So we're making this administratively done. Next, any questions on that? Okay, next is administrative variances. So administrative variances are variances that are handled administratively. So these are smaller scale variances to our ordinance. So let's say there's a setback. Someone wants to build their garage 2 feet into their setback. Cameron has the ability to allow that if everything checks out. So there was an administrative variance that talked about subdividing agricultural land without requiring a zone change. And it kind of muddied the waters here. We already have these processes set up. So if you're creating an agricultural, or if you're subdividing agricultural land, let's say you want 2 acres, that would go into the rural residential zoning district. So we already have a process for that. So we're getting rid of that part of the administrative variance, and we're adding in, so subdivisions, sometimes applicants want to subdivide land in really irregular shapes and flag lots and things like that. We are not proponents of flag lots. It creates lots of different issues. But if someone has topographical issues on their property, or there's a fence line that's inhibiting them from subdividing in a way that is not a flag, or is going to create a flag lot, then Cameron has the ability to administratively approve that type of subdivision. So that's what we added into there. Any questions on that one? Okay. Development agreements. Currently, our ordinance lists development agreements under the major subdivision section of the ordinance. So as you all know, development agreements help us tie the applicant to putting in the proper infrastructure for the subdivision that they're creating. So in major subdivisions, it makes sense that we have these development agreements in place. For minor subdivisions, we also want these to be in place. So we just added this to the minor subdivision portion of the ordinance. And then finally, I'm almost done, there's architectural standards. So in our current ordinance, we have this section that talks about architectural standards and how every building has to meet, has to be made of certain criteria or certain material that matches the adjacent property owner's material. Well, we're the county and we don't have, in our opinion, it's kind of not a thing that we should be requiring. So we're taking out the architectural standard portion of the ordinance. We saw it as an overregulation and unnecessary. So that concludes all the major changes. Like I said, there's a lot of grammar and formatting issues that were corrected through this overhaul as well. With these changes, we're also proposing to update our fee schedule. So you can see it in your packet, or well, I guess you don't have attachments, do you? Yeah. Do they? Oh, okay, good. So, yeah. So the old fee schedule lists the majority of things as like $500. It requires conditional use permit renewal is $500. There was a lot of things that were, in our opinion, a bit too expensive. So we are reducing everything to pretty much, all the land use stuff is going to be $200. And then all the subdivision things will stay the same. So subdivisions will still be $500. And then everything in the land use side except for temporary use permits and conditional use permit renewals and administrative variances. Everything else will be $200. So we hope that that's a good change. And then the development guide has been updated to reflect all of these new project fees if you approve the fee schedule. So planning and zoning heard this. They voted unanimously to recommend approval of an ordinance amending the countywide zoning district map, an ordinance amendment of 2015 zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations and amendments hereto, and the fee schedule. So if you agree with their recommendation, I would just make a recommendation to read that verbatim because we're adopting the new ordinance and we're adopting the new zoning map ordinance as well as the fee schedule. So it's 3 different parts. Do you have any questions?
Does anybody got any questions for Sam? What are the wishes?
Yeah. Okay.
So you need these 2 ordinances approved and a new fee schedule.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we follow the recommendations of planning and zoning and approve the ordinance amending the countywide zoning district map and the ordinance amendment, zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, and the 2022 fee schedule.
I'll second.
Motion and second, any discussion?
I would just like to add, if I may, kudos to Sam, Cameron, and Land Solutions for working on this. I know you put a lot of time and effort into it, and so hopefully we're good for another 5 to 10 years, but we all know times change, so anyway, thanks.
Any further discussion? Roll call, Beth?
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and Corey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, next, looks like it's communications.
Good morning. Just one thing for you this morning. At your last regular meeting, you approved the program details for the tourism grant program utilizing funds from the Visitor Promotion Fund. And so in your packet, you have a draft of the application. Since your approval of the program details, the grant review committee did meet. We went over the application to finalize it and added the accountability element of it, similar to like what we did with the behavioral health grants, just a small reporting requirement so we can know how the funds were used and be able to kind of understand their impact as we continue to plan moving forward. So happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, just seeking your approval of the application. And then it will be released here shortly after the meetings this morning. The deadline is September the 2nd. Then the committee will review and provide recommendations to the board with the goal of announcing those awards during your October 18th meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the application for the tourism grant program and also give kudos to Lindsay and Barry's involvement as well. This is a pretty cool thing.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lindsay. Preliminary budget 2023.
Good morning. We've met in the past couple weeks, 3 times on this budget. Today is the day I'm going to ask your approval on the 2023 preliminary budget. I also want to remind you that at the meetings we discussed, the public hearing would be held September 20th
2022 at 8 a.m. in this room. So if you want to change that, this is the time to do that.
Everybody's good with that date? Okay. Okay, so you're just looking for a motion to approve the preliminary budget, correct?
Yep, to push it to the next steps.
I think just a reminder, Christie, as, if I may, this is the time we approve the budget. So from now on, the budget cannot go up, but it can go down.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary budget for fiscal year 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Can
Thank
I
you.
ask you one more thing?
Absolutely.
Late yesterday, a vendor called and he has not received payment that we sent out on July 20th. It was Bechtold Paving. Normally, we put a duplicate warrant request on the consent agenda, but we had missed that because of the lateness of the day. So I have copies of it, or I can just tell you the information. Which would you prefer?
Tell us the
Tell you the
information.
information. Okay. The vendor has also signed and notarized the form. It's Bechtold Paving. It was check number 98436 dated 7/20/22 for $2,070,732.72. The repayment, once we've confirmed everything with the bank, will go out EFT. No more checks. So we're making a push to send everything EFT, but this one escaped the net somehow.
Do you need a motion to approve?
Yeah, what do you need from us?
Yes, I need a motion to have the commissioner, the chairman sign this, and then Beth has to attest it. And I can just give her the copy so you can sign it later.
And that's a warrant check or a
Duplicate warrant.
okay, I'd make a motion to authorize the chairman to sign and issue the duplicate warrant check.
Second. Second.
Okay, motion and second. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Look forward to signing a check that big today. All right, there's nothing under county highway, so it looks like Karen, you're up.
Thank you. Okay, so last year, this board, at the request of Williston Township, authorized a loan to Williston Township for paving the road in Ferris subdivision up to $250,000. Well, now the project is in, and so the township has wanted their money. The actual cost for the project was only $184,615. The joint powers agreement also required them to pay $1,000 plus 3% of the actual cost, which came out to be $6,538.45, which township's already paid. And I just want authorization for the chair, or for approval, and for the authorization for the chair to sign the joint powers agreement, which allows the county to collect and then retain the special assessments to pay off the loan to the township of $184,615.
What are the wishes?
Motion to approve. Authorize the chairman to sign.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
And did I miss any department heads? Just Helen. As soon as Lindsay lets her go.
Good morning.
Lindsay's note to me there, which I don't know that I'm going to get into the weeds of, is that there's some nuances to this idea of the budget going up and down versus levies going up and down. And so really, nothing can go up. Levies are the primary concern when we're looking at a preliminary budget, because the notices will go out at the end of the month. Position report, I think you all have it in front of you. We are looking for permission to fill a corrections officer position at the sheriff's office. She is going into another area of law enforcement, and we need to fill it.
Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes.
I would point out, just for your reference, I'm sure you're poring over this report every week. The number of employees that we have listed here is quite high, and that's because many of the workers who work the June election and will work the November election are being carried in the auditor line, and so it's a high number just for the election. It's as much as anything, we're just keeping them in the system so we don't have to re-enter them. So know that it's a strangely inflated number, but that's why. On the back side, or page 2, maybe for you, we are prepared to, for you to approve a new weed board member, or rather to approve Corey Perizic to be reappointed to the position that he's been in at the weed board. Term would run 9/1 of '22 to 8/31 of '26. We did not get any, we advertised the position out on our website and through Facebook for probably 45 days, 30 to 45 days. Didn't get any other applicants, but Corey had shown interest from the beginning in being reappointed.
What are the wishes?
I'd make a motion to appoint Corey Perizic for a term of 9/1/2022 through 8/31 of 2026.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call, Beth.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, Helen. No further on the agenda. We will consider it adjourned, 9:01.